You guys, I started a podcast. I'm going to play for you the second episode. I'm really excited about this because, well, I was like, what's my deeper purpose here? What's the purpose of my entertainment? And really, I want to bestow this unique perspective, being raised Baha'i and Native American Peyote Church. I want to share this. And really, there's not time on these viral driven YouTube, Instagram apps, so I was like, what should I do? And I realized I should have started a podcast a long time ago to discuss these topics because really, these viral videos and stuff, it's just a way to attract people. And if you want to go deeper, I suggest you listen. Let's start the episode now. For all the talents and entertainment I have to offer the world, I feel a spiritual perspective is the most valuable and unique thing I have to offer. So that's why I want to share this and my podcast with you. I once had a dream that I met God. This dream is very hard to describe. God was like a golden light of immense pleasure and joy. When you were immersed in it, it felt like the most amazing high, better than having orgasms and taking all the euphoric drugs all at the same time. And my existence had become part of like a page, or a fold, or even like a blanket of energy, one of trillions or even infinite energy folds that you could curl up into and feel 100% secure in your existence, your own personal space and page in God's infinite story, in God's encompassing force. Now that could just be my subconsciousness while I'm dreaming, experiencing what my mind would imagine God to be like. With all these rationalities aside, the dream at least tells me that I have a firm desire to know my Creator. So what if I told you that when you die, there will be no more time, there will be no dishonesty, and everything will be permanent and infinite? What if the next dimension was our consciousness lifted into a world above time, as if we were looking down at a map that is time laying before you in 2 dimensions? If you become your thoughts, there will be no ability to be dishonest because other souls will see right through you. Souls that learn dishonesty and trickery in this life to get ahead will be severely handicapped in the next. In this podcast, I'll be analyzing the subject of creation, the afterlife, our purpose, and what God is, and I'll be analyzing concepts from Baha'i, Hindu, Christian religions, and taking into account the atheist perspective, laws of attraction, and what philosopher Thomas Aquinas has to say. Remember, these are all just my interpretations, my own personal belief that I want to share with you. Maybe you disagree with me. Maybe you have a different worldview. I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below, and if you offer a captivating argument, maybe I'll have you on my podcast to have a discussion. I always wondered about the meaning of life and the afterlife ever since I was a child. Being exposed to a wide range of religions in my life has led me to a direction and some answers. Being that I was raised Baha'i, I recall what the Baha'i faith says, not only that the afterlife is infinite, but that we couldn't possibly understand it within this world, so don't waste too much time here trying to ponder it. But that's kind of boring. I really relate to their baby in the womb metaphor, that this lifetime is like the baby in the womb. The baby in the womb is growing fingers, eyes, nose, mouth, all these things that it does not need in the womb world to exist. If anything, they start to get in the way and the baby has to be born. But when the baby is born, it becomes fully evident why it was growing those things. The same is true for the spiritual qualities we are growing, of love, patience, kindness, honesty, trustworthiness. All these things is like we're growing our spirit body, that when we die, we will be reborn into another existence in which all of those qualities, just like what the baby in the womb was growing, all of those qualities will be so very necessary for our existence in the next world. So there's a purpose, right? And even if there's no definitive way to prove that, at least believing in a greater purpose gives you an extra boost of confidence that in your mind you are doing the right thing, that you're guided on some path, some journey, as if you're Han Solo in Star Wars. It's one of the 5 ways philosopher Sir Thomas Aquinas proves the existence of God, that everything in existence has a purpose. that something wouldn't exist if it didn't have purpose. But the logical person can't rely on a philosophical justification for having faith. They have to measure it and prove it scientifically. But if you can't see, hear, or touch the spiritual dimension, how do you know it's there? I mean, how do we know your memories are there? How do you measure them? A human can recount a memory, and a witness can be used in court as evidence, but how do you know a memory is really there? Someone can be lying to you. In court, there isn't any precision instruments to use to measure or detect if that memory is really there. It doesn't hold any weight here or take up space, but a memory can weigh you down emotionally. And somehow, with our complex brains, we can acknowledge that there is an emotional weight to things. At least an atheist can acknowledge there are things that exist that can't be measured by scientific instruments, things like memories. But what if the memory could be detected in another dimension? What if it actually weighed something and took up matter over there? Or maybe it would be that reality's version of matter. And what if thoughts and consciousness were tangible matter in that world? Then that would make the afterlife infinite, just like it says in spiritual texts. To be able to think or will something into existence, now that would be fancy. One other thing it says in the Baha'i spiritual texts is that time won't exist in the next reality. What? Not exist? Well, that's great for me because ever since I was a kid, I struggled to grasp the impermanence of time. Everything is always changing, so nothing remains the same. It always disappears and becomes something else. It's never in the same place. So, it's quite incredible. The world of impermanence is the world of the finite versus the world of the permanently. I recall a quote I came up with during one of my childhood peyote ceremonies, that everything that ever was is what it is because it never was what it is. That nothing really exists because it's in a constant state of change. So, that's quite incredible. The world of impermanence is also the world of the finite, versus the world of the permanent is also the world of the infinite. Imagine through this grand experience of having a consciousness that's channeled into our bodies, we are growing something else. We are growing our spirit body that exists somewhere else, like in an incubation mode. And when we die, our spirit body is released from the incubator that is being trapped in the human body. It's finished growing, and you become all the thoughts and memories you've grown while in the physical. Maybe it exists within that world and within this world at the same time, like the baby in the womb. So it's very important to grow virtues and love and spirituality because this is it. As individuals, we are given just this one time here to grow our spirit bodies. Also, when I was younger, I always struggled with the notion of what happens to your soul or your consciousness when you become mentally disturbed or brain damaged. Really, this belief I have makes me feel more secure that we are creating some other kind of energy that is unrelated to mental capacity or intelligence in another world. I recall something that's also written in Baha'i scripture that it's very difficult for the soul to grow stronger in the next world, that one of the only ways the soul can grow stronger and progress after you've passed away is when people in this world pray for the progress of your soul that has passed. So that's why when I pass away, I hope that you all say prayers for me. It's really quite incredible that all this stuff in the universe, planets, supernovas, every person that died trying to cure disease, all the people who sacrificed their virgin daughters, all the damn witches that got burnt at the stake before we had to realize to stop doing that stuff, all of this so that you can be here today having this experience. So we are basically God creating more of itself, splitting parts of itself off and planting these little seeds to grow them larger on this grand journey to reunite with the source. We are supposed to try to attain the presence of Creator, to try to know it, and to know God is to know oneself. Say we are these consciousnesses with human nature born into these bodies of these animals, that aside from maternal instinct and a communal drive for the betterment of the clan, we are created selfish. The lion that doesn't share its kill with the hyenas will have a better chance of survival, right? Children want their toy or candy and could care less about how hard mom has to work to earn the money that buys it. because we are bestowed with intelligence and abstract thought, we can see a greater purpose other than the animal desires of sleeping, eating, and reproducing. We can understand that the condition of a tribe that is loving and giving to each other will be closer to heaven, and one that's lying, cheating, and stealing will be closer to hell. And I made this connection as a teenager, that we are on a grand journey of metamorphosis. Maybe we are trying to become kind of the opposite of how we are created. So if we are created inherently selfish, maybe the grand journey is that of pursuing love, shedding our self-serving animal nature. For all the disagreeing with science and evolution Christianity does by sticking to a liberal interpretation of the Bible, if interpreted metaphorically, Genesis, the creation story of the Bible, not only alludes to what I just described, but can even agree with science and evolution. In Genesis, humankind is first in the Garden of Eden. It's described as a paradise where humans are at one with the animal kingdom. Then when humans eat from the tree of knowledge, we are cast out of the Garden of Eden to toil endlessly in the desert wasteland. This could actually represent humans' evolving intelligence. The garden represents being one with the animal kingdom. It's a paradise because we are completely content with our condition. When we eat from the tree of knowledge, this is what separated us from the animal world, to never again be content with our surroundings, constantly toiling in the wasteland to make things better for ourselves. This is also what gives us free will. The animal is always content with the garden, not doing anything to alter its destiny in its animal role. Everything in the animal's life is at equilibrium. Reactions are mostly pre-governed by instinct and evolution and brain chemistry. It's also this division which justifies saying that animals don't have a soul in the same way humans do. And here we notice a major divide between Eastern religions and Western religions, in that most Eastern religions do believe that animals have souls, even in Hinduism believing that you can be reincarnated back into an animal. The Baha'i qualifier for an animal to have a soul is that the animal becomes intelligent enough to have abstract thoughts that there is a higher power and afterlife or greater purpose other than just being an animal. Now, this isn't a prideful boasting that humans are better than animals. If anything, animals are at equilibrium with God. Animals are already one with higher power, so they are more exalted in a certain way. My father told me this point he posed to Christians, that maybe heaven and hell could be the same exact place, an amazing banquet dinner in two separate rooms, but you've been given spoons that are longer than your arms to eat with. If one room is where all the sinners go and the other room is where all the saints go, it could be the same exact place, but one would be heaven and one would be hell. If you look in the room with all the sinners, they'd be complaining, all this amazing food and you can't even eat with spoons longer than your arms. What kind of grift is this? They'd be fighting with each other, complaining the whole time. If you look at the room with all the saints, they'll be feeding each other and able to enjoy the food. You can also apply the laws of attraction to what I'm speaking of. Through growing our love, we become more attractive to other beings. Through loving actions, we become closer to one another, less alone, more interconnected. And many religions say we are trying to become closer to the source. And therefore, if we are all little pieces of the whole of it, then to get closer to one another is to also get closer to the source. In Hinduism, when the soul finally escapes karmic cycle, it becomes one with Brahman, when the last bodily incarnation dies. This is a higher plane of existence that transcends the suffering of earthly life. Essentially, the soul rejoins the intangible energy that created the universe. Even more interestingly, Hinduism supports the scientific theories of the Big Bang and the Big Crunch, when it describes the process of creation and destruction as an expanding and contracting of the universe. The universe will take place and everything will be destroyed during shrinking, and the whole of the universe will disappear because it is completely shrinked. After that, the cycle will continue. There's also mention of everything being separated out and then coming back together again. And it's no coincidence that all of these religions say that developing your love and selfless qualities is the most important purpose, and that's how you come closer to attaining the presence of the Creator. So, really, all the religions are agreeing on the main fundamentals of our purpose. They just disagree a lot on ritual and customs. But why do all of this? Still, if this is what it is, it doesn't answer the question why. Why not just be nothing? Why do all of this? If God is all knowing, all wise, then why split itself up into infinite little pieces that are lost, confused in the dark, to the purpose, to its fate and destiny? If God already knows the future of our paths as souls, why leave us feeling lost and insecure? If God already knows the future of our paths as souls, why leave us lost and feeling insecure? Why can't we have that knowledge? Why can't we just automatically be created in a state of infinite bliss? Well, because we are how God experiences its own creation. Through being ignorant, we are able to experience the world through the eyes of innocence. Because how do you fully experience the movie? You have to not know the outcome, with no one spoiling the ending for you. And why are we left in the dark to the afterlife? Because it's better to watch the original before you watch the sequel. For if we already knew the plot, we wouldn't be able to fully experience existence. The other reason is that if you were to see the afterlife, we wouldn't want to exist within this world ever again, and we'd lose the ability to relate to people here. So I recall a Baha'i story of a man who begged the Prophet Baha'u'llah to show him the afterlife. The man was warned that if he was taken there and brought back, he wouldn't be able to bear being in this world again. He'd lose his mental health. And sure enough, when Baha'u'llah brought him back, he did go insane, and he eventually committed suicide. I remember a quote I came up with at the end of the world in Palenque, Mexico. It goes, God loves to play. This is why God created all of us, why God became all of us. Because through us, God gets to play. So when we play with each other, God is playing with himself. There is only one God. Funny, but if you think about it, the purpose of play is to learn. And by playing, God learns about itself, or more so, we learn about God. And to know God is to know oneself. Here's the answer I think I'm coming to, is that God created itself, yes, to make more of itself, but also to experience its own creation through the eyes of innocence, because that's the only way to fully experience it. Really, here's the answer I think I'm coming to, is yes, God created us to make more of itself, but also to experience its own creation through the eyes of innocence, because that's the only way to fully experience it. So what if I told you that when you die, there will be no time, there will be no dishonesty, and everything will be permanent? What if the next dimension is our consciousness lifted into a world above time, as if we are looking down at a map that is time laying before you in 2 dimensions, and the 3-dimensional is really below that? It's crazy to think about, but this is awareness about how important pursuing the spiritual path is.